All right. Good afternoon, everyone. At 12:45 p.m., there will be a briefing here in this room, organized by our good friends at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to launch the World Urbanization Prospects 2025 Summary of Results. Speakers will be Björg Sandkjær, DESA's Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination, along with John Wilmoth, whom you all know as DESA's Director of the Population Division, and Sarah Hertog, DESA's Population Affairs Officer. And again, that will be about 45 minutes from now. This morning in Belém, Brazil, where COP30 is taking place, the Secretary General met with climate scientists, experts, and economists. He also held a bilateral meeting with the Vice Minister of the People's Republic of China, Li Gao. Yesterday afternoon, after his arrival back in Belém, the Secretary General met with the COP30 President, André Aranha Correia do Lago. Marina Silva, Brazil's Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, was also present at the meeting. They discussed the positive and constructive tone of the ongoing negotiations. The Secretary General emphasized that the outcomes of COP30 must respond to the urgency of the climate crisis and needs of the developing countries, especially those most vulnerable. Later, the Secretary General met the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, Francesco La Camera, and he also held a meeting with the CEO of the European Climate Foundation, Ms. Laurence Tubiana. This afternoon, the Secretary General will meet negotiating parties and ministers. He will also have a meeting with a youth advisory group and will participate in a youth roundtable. Turning to the Gaza Strip, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Tom Fletcher, said yesterday that Palestinians across Gaza are cold and soaked following recent rains, adding that frustration is growing as floods rise and what little people have is destroyed. He reiterated that the UN and our partners are mobilizing to help, but much more is needed. Mr. Fletcher said that remaining restrictions must be lifted to urgently get more aid in. On the ground in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs stresses that we and our partners remain committed to providing life-saving support, including shelter. Humanitarians continue to distribute tents, tarpaulins, and other essential items to affected families and assess people's needs to guide the response. The UN is fast-tracking funds to bolster these efforts. The humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Ramiz Al-Akbarov, has released $18 million from the Occupied Palestinian Territory Humanitarian Fund to support critical operations across Gaza as winter approaches and heavy rains begin to compound dire living conditions. Those funds are already allowing partners to move ahead with more than 30 planned projects covering everything from food and nutrition to water, health, shelter, protection, and other essential support. Today, Dr. Al-Akbarov visited a site for displaced people in Gaza City, where some families are staying after last week's rainstorm destroyed their shelters. He also went to the Rantisi Pediatric Hospital, which is being rehabilitated to address extensive damage sustained during the war. At the displacement site, Dr. Al-Akbarov spoke with families who urgently need basic assistance as winter draws near. He also appealed once again for more crossings, for more routes inside Gaza, and for NGOs to be able to bring in supplies. Our partners report that as of Sunday, the number of operational health service points in Gaza rose to 219, compared with fewer than 200 in October. The 22 new service points include 12 primary healthcare centers, 6 medical points, and 4 hospitals in the northern governorates. As you know, the catch-up vaccination campaign launched on the 9th of November is ongoing, with more than 7,000 children under the age of 3 already vaccinated during the first 5 days of that effort. Meanwhile, our partners providing food assistance report that on Saturday, more than 1.3 million meals were distributed by more than 24 partners through 195 kitchens. That includes over 180,000 meals distributed in northern Gaza and about 1.2 million in the Deir al-Bala and Khan Yunis governorates. The UN and our partners also continue to provide general food assistance, reaching more than 64,000 households. That's about 320,000 people as of Saturday. And we were asked yesterday about the adoption of the resolution on Gaza by the Security Council, and we said that it is an important step in the consolidation of the ceasefire, which the Secretary General encourages all parties to abide by. It is essential now to translate the diplomatic momentum into concrete and urgently needed steps on the ground. The United Nations is committed to implementing the roles entrusted to it in the resolution, scaling up humanitarian assistance to meet the needs of civilians in Gaza, and supporting all efforts to move the parties toward the next phase of the ceasefire. The Secretary General underlines the importance of moving towards the second phase of the U.S. plan, leading to a political process for the achievement of the two-state solution, in line with previous United Nations resolutions. This morning, the Secretary General delivered remarks virtually to the Security Council session on enhancing regional counterterrorism cooperation in West Africa and the Sahel. He told Council members that the security situation there is growing more critical by the day. Established groups are expanding their reach. Several coastal states are under threat, and we face the risk of a disastrous domino effect across the entire region. According to the Global Terrorism Index, the Secretary General said, 5 of the 10 countries most affected by terrorism are in the Sahel. This violence and instability is unleashing massive suffering. He called for 3 areas of urgent action. First, he said, this regional crisis demands a regional response, one that is unified, coherent, and consensus-based. Then, the Secretary General added, humanitarian needs must be met. As the 6 humanitarian appeals in the Sahel and Lake Chad Basin for 2025 remain severely underfunded, Mr. Guterres called on member states to maintain strong financial support for humanitarian response plans in the region. And third, the Secretary General appealed for a coherent development strategy to address the conditions that lead to terrorism taking hold in the first place. With coordinated efforts, political will, and the support of member states and this Council, the Secretary General said we can deliver the security, stability, and opportunity that the people of West Africa and the Sahel need and deserve. In South Sudan, a mobile court supported by our mission, UNMISS, concluded its work today in Bunj, in Upper Nile State. The court delivered decisions on 28 serious criminal cases, including murder and sexual and gender-based violence. UNMISS says that the court convicted 23 people and released 22 others who had been wrongfully detained or had already served their sentences. Led by the court's judiciary and the Ministry of Justice, the mobile court helped clear a major backlog caused by the absence of a high court judge in the area since 2021. With a permanent judge now deployed to Bunj, justice services are expected to continue. And turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we joined the head of our Peace Operations Department, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, to welcome the signing of the framework agreement between the government of the DRC and the AFC M23, which establishes guiding principles towards peace. We also express our appreciation for the support of regional and international partners, in particular Qatar, the United States, the African Union, and Togo. We encourage the parties to continue negotiations in good faith to translate these commitments into concrete progress on the ground. And of course, our peacekeeping mission in the DRC, MONUSCO, remains fully committed to working alongside the Congolese people and authorities to support efforts towards lasting peace. Turning to Nigeria, we urge the swift release of 25 schoolgirls abducted following a reported attack on Monday on a girls' school in northern Nigeria. In a statement, the UN Children's Fund stressed that this tragic incident is yet another stark reminder of the urgent need to protect children, schools, and the personnel they rely upon to learn safely. UNICEF underscored that it continues to work with government partners, civil society, and communities to strengthen child protection systems and promote safe, inclusive learning environments across Nigeria. But these systems must be enforced to prevent future tragedies. The agency also calls for those responsible for this incident to be held to account in accordance with national and international standards. From Haiti, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that people are fleeing their homes in the commune of Tabar, in the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince, following armed attacks last week. According to the International Organization for Migration, attacks on November 13th and 14th forced more than 600 people from their homes. Most remain in Tabar, hosted by local families. These incidents come as the security situation in the capital continues to deteriorate. Attacks in the residential areas of Thomasine and Fermat, previously considered relatively safe, drove more than 1,800 people to seek safety elsewhere. By the end of October, the number of people displaced by violence had reached 1.4 million, the highest level recorded in the country, and up by more than a third from last year. With insecurity rising, we urge all parties to protect civilians and ensure safe, rapid, unhindered humanitarian access to every community in need. The World Food Program warned today of a deepening global hunger crisis, with 318 million people expected to face crisis-level hunger or worse next year. This is more than double the number in 2019. Despite rising needs, falling humanitarian funding means that WFP can assist only about one-third of those requiring support. In 2026, the agency aims to reach 110 million people at the cost of $13 billion, but anticipates receiving barely half that amount. WFP is urging the international community to invest in proven solutions to stop the spread of hunger and get back on track in 2026 towards a world with zero hunger. Today is the World Day for the Prevention of and Healing from Child Sexual Exploitation, Abuse, and Violence. Children, especially girls, face heightened risks offline, online, and in armed conflicts. These violations are grave human rights abuses with lasting impacts on health and development. Today also marks the start of World Antimicrobial Resistance Week, which raises awareness of antimicrobial resistance and promotes global action against drug-resistant pathogens. This year's theme is Act Now, Protect Our Present, Secure Our Future. That's it for me. Are there any questions? Yes, Edie.
Two questions, Farhan. First, is the Secretary General planning any calls or meetings to talk about specifics in implementing the Gaza resolution adopted yesterday by the Security Council?
Well, there's no specific calls to highlight, but the Secretary General is going to continue to be in touch with world leaders, both by phone and in person. He'll have some travels that we'll announce in the next days. So while he's meeting with different leaders, he will be talking about the steps forward in the Gaza peace process, among the other topics he has of concern.
And secondly, does the Secretary General have any comment on a report issued today by Physicians for Human Rights saying that at least 94 Palestinians died in Israeli prisons in the last 2 years?
We have been clear about our concerns about Palestinian detainees and the need to protect their basic rights and their dignity. And this report is another example of the need to make sure that the conditions of all detainees are upheld. Deji.
A follow-up on Edie's question on yesterday's resolution. In that resolution, if I read it through thoroughly enough, there is only one part that mentioned the United Nations, which is the humanitarian operations. What does the Secretary General think the UN can do more than the humanitarian operations?
Well, as I said at the start of this briefing, we're committed to implementing the role that has been entrusted to the UN in the resolution. That includes scaling up humanitarian assistance to meet the needs of civilians in Gaza and supporting all efforts to move the parties towards the next phase of the ceasefire.
So there will be a board of peace in that resolution. Has UN contacted with anybody to discuss whether UN representatives should be on that board?
We are not part of the discussions at this stage, but obviously we are prepared to play any role that is involved in supporting the work of this resolution, including ensuring that we can move on to the subsequent phases of the ceasefire.
The Russian representative yesterday told us he believes this resolution actually put the UN aside. So what he said is that he believes this kind of mechanism will be lack of monitoring from the UN or the Security Council. What do you think of the resolution and the role that played by the UN in this resolution is inadequate?
First of all, obviously, the very fact that the Security Council approved the resolution underscores that this is a resolution that the Council members themselves support, and that this is something that the sponsors of the resolution wanted the Security Council to play a role in. And we'll see as it proceeds the role that the Security Council and the United Nations as a whole have to play. Yes, please.
Thank you, Farhan. A follow-up on Edith and Deji's question. The resolution 2803 stipulated forming an ISF, International Stabilization Force, through voluntary contributions. My question is, at the end, when these force is on the ground, is it going to be under the blue helmet leadership, command, or how it's going to work UN vis-a-vis the
I would suggest you look carefully at the text of the resolution. It doesn't mention a United Nations peacekeeping force in it. Gabriel?
Thanks, Farhan. On the resolution 2803, a question on the Board of Peace, which is going to play a critical role in the future governance of Gaza, at least for the next 2 years, the mandate's in place. If the Secretary General was invited to partake in the Board of Peace, be on the board, would he accept?
We'll have to see what happens in the future. Obviously, we are willing to play any role that can help support the ceasefire and move us forward towards a two-state solution.
But one more follow-up on that, if I may, Farhan. When it came to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the UN did not participate because of many reasons, but one being that it did not fall in line with the humanitarian principles of impartiality. This question isn't about the GHF, it's about the Board of Peace. Does the Board of Peace, what you know about it so far, fall in line with the principles that the UN could engage with it?
We would actually need to see the details about what the Board of Peace entails before we can make a reasoned judgment on that. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lily from Hong Kong Phoenix TV. My question is about Venezuela. President Trump said yesterday that he has not ruled out the possibility of sending troops to Venezuela as a buildup of the U.S. force in the region. So does the UN consider these kind of like unilateral actions would be violate the UN Charter? Also, has the SG talked to any of the U.S. official about it?
We have made our concerns clear, including from this podium. We want to make sure that there's no escalation in and around Venezuela, and that all actions comply with the United Nations Charter and with international law.
Follow up.
Yeah.
President Maduro said he is willing to talk to the U.S. about it. So would the SG offer any of the diplomatic measure into it?
Well, our good officers are always available in any bilateral disputes if both parties want that. I haven't seen any sign that the parties want the UN to be involved, but certainly we encourage dialogue between the US and Venezuela. Yes.
Thank you, Farhan. WFP put out a statement today saying that it can only help roughly 1/3 of those in need. Can you tell us which country is most responsible for this decline in funding? Because that's what the statement says, because of the decline in funding. And then secondly, has the Secretary General been trying to find alternative sources of revenue for WFP? Thank you.
So we want to make sure that the World Food Program has the revenue that it needs. I actually read out the note about the World Food Program and its lack of funding just a few minutes ago. So I'd refer you not just to what I said, but also to the full World Food Program press release. But the basic point is that right now, they intend next year to reach 110 million people at a cost of $13 billion. But we anticipate that the World Food Program might receive barely half that amount. So we want to make sure that's much larger than any individual country's responsibility. We want to make sure that all donors live up to their responsibilities.
But can you please tell us or get back to us on the top 5 countries that have reduced their funding over
I
the
think
past
for that,
this year?
I would refer you to my colleagues in the World Food Program, and I'm sure they'd be happy to provide the necessary information. Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you, Farhan. Last week, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar met the UN chief. Do you have any readout of the meeting? And also, Minister Jaishankar said in a post on X that he looks forward to welcoming Guterres in India. Does the UN chief plan to travel to India anytime soon or next year maybe?
Well, he's certainly willing to travel to India when circumstances allow it. I don't have any travel by the Secretary General to India to confirm in the short term. And as for the meeting with Minister Jaishankar, I don't have any particular details. Obviously, they discussed issues of mutual concern. And with that, please come back at 12:45, and we'll meet with officials from DESA about the World Urbanization Prospects Report for 2025.